Culture, gachenia. Ta'achas autumn, a ve, live. Very happy to be with you. See, dipping our toes in a little bit of Gaeilge, huh? Side note, before I even talk about the main points here, I think it's really good for all of Ireland if anyone who's into it, just start dropping little bits of Gaelic here, there, and everywhere. Whoever's driving the bus, almost always, I'll be like, yep, go to Mila Margaret, or go to Margaret, as I'm getting off. And like, huh? What am I in a dream? What was that? But like this morning or yesterday, it was like some woman doesn't look Irish, but whatever. She knows what I'm saying, right? And same in a cafe. They know what you're saying, by context. But anyway, so I'm Jamie McGlue. I'm an independent candidate for Dublin Bay North, and I stand for free speech, fair borders, and full sovereignty, right? And I think these are all essentials which have all been under ruthless attack, not just by the politicians, but by the media and, whatever financial powers are backing all of these people and, political financial elites elsewhere in Davos and etc. Great Reset and all this madness. So I stand for common sense, traditional policies. And so if you live in Dublin Bay North, if you know someone who does, please consider me. Please vote me number one. And you can check out jamiemcglue.ie to see more. So JAMIEMCGLUE.ie, like sticky. So we're going to talk about Aontu today. So should you vote for them? Now, this is directed to Aontu voters. Okay, you know what you're doing. But people who are mainstream voters who are thinking maybe, say in Dublin Bay North, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, they're, traditional candidates who are here are retiring. They've been there a long time. They're now, out. So and a lot of them are very disillusioned. So they're probably considering like, is there a reasonable alternative here? And Aontu might present itself as, that. And then also, so I'm going to talk to you about why, in a nutshell, I would say you should vote for Aontu. And then also talking to the people, the more anti-establishment, more free thinking, I would say, parties like you say the Patriots, or the people who feel, as I do, that actually Ireland, there's some mixture of ideology, incompetence, and corruption, which is causing us to go down a very bad path. And it's already causing a lot of harm, but it gets much worse if we continue down this path. We need to pull back. Basically, we need freedom, and that's what our ancestors were fighting for so long, and we're throwing it away. So free speech, you should be able to say whatever you want. It doesn't matter if, 1 in 100 people say something nasty. Don't hang out with them, whatever. That's the traditional way. Don't make it a police state, fair borders. Yeah, of course we can't have limitless people coming in the country. Are we crazy? Of course you can't. If you do a survey around the world, ask them, hey, do you think you could have limitless people coming to your country? And then when they say no, are you going to call them racist too? You're going to call the Africans and the Asians and the Latin Americans racist? Because they're all going to say it too. It's just natural, right? Of course, you can't have limitless people coming in a country, especially a small country like Ireland, with limited resources and all this, the history of, colonialism and whatnot. And then full sovereignty. That, of course, the decisions which affect Ireland should mostly be made in Ireland. Yeah, the EU, in my opinion, we should try to reform the EU and make it work. But I totally understand people who say we just need to leave. Um, and I had that perspective for quite a while until, a while back, I kind of thought, actually, no, it's like a toxic relationship. We need to try to make it work. And then if it doesn't work, we can say, okay, no regrets, we're leaving, we did our part. And so the EU, yeah, has become quite toxic, but there are redeeming features. And if it can be reformed, basically, I would say in a nutshell, Irish law supersedes EU law anytime there's a conflict, and whatever, every other country in Europe, that should be how it is. Then I think it would be a great thing. There'd be no problem. If they make a law we don't like, we just change it, In so in a nutshell, these kind of things, there's other issues, but I think these are the core of what people like me are feeling like, this is no one's offering this. Aontu offering this. So this is what I'm also speaking to people like this, say, the far right, as they would be, slandered. Although I think that it's actually quite a centrist position, or center right, you know. It's the position that Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil had like 20, 30 years ago, you know. It's like, yeah, free speech, limited immigration, Ireland should have control of, our decisions. That was totally normal back in the day, and you wouldn't get voted in if you disagreed with it. So it wasn't really talked about much. Anyway, so to you, I would also say to people who are considering voting myself or the other kind of, I would say there's 6 other candidates like myself, um, in who are kind of on this more like fringe as it's traditionally been, but actually now I think it's kind of becoming the center. And I would say to all of you, you should also vote Aontu. And so here's why. Okay, so both mainstream and kind of counterculture, why should you vote Aontu? So I think basically Aontu, and I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know who controls the party or whatever, but they are on board with these 3 things: free speech, yes; fair borders, yes, in a way; and full sovereignty, yes. So they want Ireland to be able to have its own decisions. Um, and yet they're not full on. They're like Eurosceptic, so they're not like anti-Europe, but they're like, hey, we got to be very careful with Europe. So that's good enough. That's better than what we've got at the moment, right? And so I'd say, but I would say basically for everyone here, it should be you should put the good independents and nationalists above Aontu. So put myself above Aontu. In Dublin Bay North, we've got 7 candidates, including James Morris of Aontu. So I would say put him 7th, and put myself first. Obviously, I'll say that, right? And then the other candidates, put them in between. So we got Michael Burke. So we got me, Michael Burke, Kevin Coyle, Dermot O'Connor, um, uh, we got Paul Fitzsimmons, um, James Morris, and then who am I leaving out here? Um, I'll get back to it, but you can check out my other video here. I'm blanking on one of us here. Sorry about that, pal. But yeah, so there's 7 of us who are standing, for the right values. So put Aontu last, just because there is some evidence to think that, in a nutshell, they're a bit too cozy with the mainstream. So if you're a former Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael voter, you're probably, oh, great, good, they're cozy with the mainstream. If you're more alternative, then you're thinking that's a bit dangerous. And fair enough, I think you're right. That there is a danger that Aontu are going to be too afraid of being demonized by the traditional, powers that be, and they're going to go along with things. So, and that's a real big danger. So, and that's why, so for example, they haven't made a big deal out of reducing legal immigration. So in their document, their immigration manifesto, I couldn't find any mention of it. Um, but Pater Tobin, when asked, was recently saying there should be legal immigration should be reduced, but that was when they pressed him. So it seems like he's trying to avoid being demonized by, the powers that be. So he's trying to find some middle ground, and that's a political strategy. That's fair enough. But there's a danger that if you're not willing to be demonized, that you could get pulled down a slippery slope towards bad ideas. So legal immigration, that shouldn't be something you need to hide and kind of dodge from. Excuse me. It's like, yeah, of course, we should have a reduction in the amount of work permits and people coming to the country, because we're in a crisis of various kinds where, temporarily at least, we need to put a cap on that, not just the illegal immigration. But to their credit, Aontu are saying totally cutting. They've got a totally reasonable, I think, very practical strategy for totally ending the illegal immigration. And then when pressed, he was saying, yeah, we should, have some sort of more strict legal immigration. So I would say, look, that's not perfect, but that's much better than what all the other parties are offering. Solidarity, People Before Profit, Labour, the Greens, Sinn Féin, Gael, Fianna Fáil. So, they deserve it there. But it should be, ideally, it'll be better for the country if we have independents who are less easily controlled by outside forces and have proven themselves very happy to just say what they think. That's all they've got as an independent, right? Whereas Aontu are trying to play another game, which is trying not to be demonized, trying to cozy up and win over the mainstream. And so these can dovetail. In certain constituencies, Aontu can get in, but the independents can't. But in some constituencies, like mine, I think Dublin Bay North, there's 5 seats. 3 of them are empty because and 2 of them might be empty because like Sinn Féin, their support's collapsed. So and Social Democrats, they've been going along. Callahan's, they've been going along with like all of this woke stuff. and tax on free speech and not putting up any defense against immigration, excessive immigration, etc. So what I think, basically put 1 to 6 here. I would say 1 to 6. Us, the independents and nationalists, so this Irish Freedom Party, Paul Fitzsimmons, there. But then Aontu, seventh, because probably it's fine, but it's taking a little bit of a chance because they haven't come out and said strongly they want to limit legal immigration. And there are some certain other things which are a bit worrying about, showing, in my opinion, that they are a bit too cozy with the mainstream, which is also why, in a nutshell, it seems they haven't been listed on the there's a document going around, a little image, really amazing thing. Vote for Ireland. Thank you so much, amazing soul, for putting it's on a Twitter page, putting this around. It's based on Fair Immigration Ireland, this list of candidates. I'll put the links in the description. You can check it out. But basically, independent and nationalist candidates who can be trusted to kind of push back against this globalist mayhem and woke mayhem, and just for traditional common sense policies. And Aontu aren't listed there. It seems because of this, like they're a little bit too much playing to the mainstream. So some examples. So with free speech, they did. I'll show you here. Aontu in 2019 they signed onto the anti-racism election protocol, which is a kind of woke thing, saying, yeah, we should have no racism in elections. Da, da, da. And if you look at the origins of it and just the kind of vibe around it, it's quite clearly a kind of emanation of woke culture and this idea that like, oh, there's this systemic racism everywhere. And it's like, well, Ireland actually has been very hospitable. We're letting huge numbers of people coming in. The Poles came in, everyone's like, whoa, this is a bit crazy. It's a lot of Polish people. I'm like, oh, actually, they're sound, they're cool, no worries, whatever. And people coming in and in and in. And no mass protests, everyone's really chill and very friendly. And in general, I find Irish people, really hospitable, and that's a big emphasis of the culture, So, but to say, and so even joining onto that is like a little bit dodgy, like, okay, being associated with that kind of thing. But also because that anti-racism protocol was part of the no hate speech movement. And so the whole hate speech thing is also, you could say like, oh, well, hate speech is bad. It's like, yeah, but this is, kind of like a Trojan horse for controlling free speech. And even in 2019, it should have been very clear to Aontu, either, there's a kind of, oh, yeah, it's probably a bit of the woke, but oh, it's no harm. We're not committing to anything we wouldn't agree with. But you're kind of indulging that a bit, which is not so good. Or you're naive and you think, oh yeah, no to hate speech. Yeah, sounds good. So either way, it's kind of not really such a good sign to people who are very concerned about the survival of Irish culture and in general Western cultures and societies where we need to find balance. And Ireland, doing this right, can be a model for others. And so it's very high stakes. And so it just seems like a bit, like a red flag there. So let's share that here. Here it is. So we are pleased to announce that Aontu has endorsed the anti-racism election protocol for 2019. You can look into it, but basically, as you can see there, no hate speech movement. And so, and then yeah, and like me, I don't like hate, okay, but like I also don't like Marxists, trying to like shut down free speech and yeah, so you got to look beyond just what they're saying and into what they're actually doing. And so, that's a bit of a red flag. Also, we have economic justice here listed. So, well, but I'll get to that after actually. So then we have just briefly here, I'll show this is the election reducing legal immigration stuff. So Aontu our common sense immigration policy. You can find this on their website. And basically they go through a new Irish border agency to kind of police the borders, protect it, reinstate planning laws. So say you can't just build like, huge camps for, illegal immigrants or asylum seekers, whatever they are, some combination thereof. A community dividend. So if you are supporting people, you should get something back for it. Although we need to be careful that doesn't replace tourism because that's not fair. Big companies or one person in the community benefiting, and rather than just like having natural tourism and everyone's kind of benefiting. For applications determined in 6 months, sounds good. And the destruction of documents, yeah, you just get deported immediately if you've destroyed a passport. You're on a plane and you don't have a passport at the airport. Okay, you've destroyed your passport, get out. No entry for criminals, criminal record checks, enforcing deportation. So you have to currently, even if someone gets through the process and they're like, yeah, you need it, you're deported, and then they can have appeals and appeals, taxpayer funded NGOs fund these appeals. And eventually after 10 years or something, literally, it's like, okay, you have to leave. No one's checking that they leave. So if you're rogue enough that you're going to break the law and come to Ireland when you don't actually deserve it, you're not really seeking asylum, then you are of course going to be rogue enough to just ignore their deportation order. Of course, right? So it's just an insane system. Basically, it's like plausible deniability. Oh, we told them to leave. Yeah, okay. Well, you could have just sent a guard to go take them to the port or the airport, couldn't you? But no, okay. So that's something, Aontu, all of this is making sense, right? Fairness in allocation of resources, so not discriminating against native people for these newcomers. Irish sea border, so yep, policing having a border you can check, so not people can't just come over through the north. Oversight of state resources, so being aware of how much money is being spent on this. It's kind of stuff that Nick Delahanty is talking about. Amazing guy, with who's running for election, right? Is it Dublin based South or is it Wicklow? I forget. I think Dublin based South. But real amazing, intelligent guy talking about the immigration industrial complex. There's all these Celtic Tiger cowboys or like big, multinational corporations making bank off of this immigration system. So anyway, so that all looks good, right? So long as, let me turn on a light here. We get the legal, if so long as aim to actually come through on the legal immigration thing, then that's all looking good. But the flirtation though with the woke thing and mainstream is a bit alarming. So you got that anti-racism thing and the no to hate speech thing. And another thing, say with conformity to the mainstream would be, so there was a vote. So something, Tracy O'Mahony, on Twitter, amazing lawyer doing a lot for the cause. She pointed out is there's a meeting. So there was the vote against the vaccine passport in during the whole COVID insanity. This, came down right down to the wire, and Pater Tóibín didn't actually vote, and he said like, "Oh, I had a meeting with someone; it was already scheduled. I didn't know the vote." But it's like, hey, there's nothing more important than like standing up there for our liberties. Like, you should have canceled whatever you had and gone and voted against this thing, the vaccine passport. Like, so the fact that he kind of felt, well, I'll just stay out of that, maybe avoid the controversy or whatever. It's like, that's not so good. How can we be sure you're not going to do that again? So I've met James Morris from Aontu, who's running in Dublin Bay North. I find him, I think he's right on basically all the issues. I agree with him, but there's just these few things like being a bit too cozy with the mainstream. Legal immigration. Are you actually sure you didn't put it in your manifesto? Are you sure you're going to actually come through on that? Or are you just saying it? And then finally, socialism. They seem to believe, Aontu, that the way to increase prosperity is socialism, where I would say actually socialism is a weight, a drain on prosperity. And so they've got economic justice, right, under their, name on their webpage and all that, and on their documents. And I would say economic freedom is really what economic justice is. And actually, so that would be another problem. Like long-term socialism, big government has gotten us into this mess. Like the NGOs is one particular outgrowth of that. And so I believe socialist programs, basically the government taxes so that it can spend it in the economy to tinker with the natural economy. Government doesn't know how to do anything, provide goods or services, but it can pay people to, takes money here, gives money back. That's all they're doing. That's what socialism is, redistributing the resources and kind of tinkering with the economy. In my opinion, that's kind of like drinking coffee or taking stimulants rather than just getting some sleep. Socialism is kind of unnatural interference and actually it doesn't work. It can work in isolated cases, but it always causes bigger problems elsewhere. So, and basically the root of almost all of our problems is the government, too much government. So, long term, I think we really need to be shrinking the state, moving towards a libertarian or classical liberal system. What's working in Argentina, 8.5% economic growth coming up, and it's like proper growth. It's not just like, on paper like China sometimes has, government just builds a bunch of ghost towns and then technically they're having growth, but genuine organic growth in the economy. And throughout history, it's been documented. Same, and so Austrian economics, or you can go to like Mises.org, Mises.org to see, the Mises Institute talks about Austrian economics and basically the idea behind like, small government, that's what's good for the economy, actually. And this is the oldest school of economics that we have. And I believe it's actually the accurate one, but it's not so good for government. So it hasn't really gotten all those juicy government contracts, and it's kind of, not that prominent. But anyway, so that's another thing with Aontu longer term we need to be aware of. It seems like they're a little bit maybe so I would say certain socialist programs might be necessary or useful as we transition out of this crony capitalist corporate socialism we've got currently. But long term, no, socialism's maybe some very small level, maybe some money for like single mothers, or, money to encourage you to start a family. There might be some things we could have. Um, but the basics, like military, police, courts, basic bureaucracy, the politician, the legislators, firefighters or whatever, real basic stuff, and then maybe some extra stuff around it, but nothing like what we have now. And so this would be a third thing against Aontu. But look at that. So just to finish here, basically compare that to the mainstream, what's going on. I think Aontu deserve a vote. So if in Dublin Bay North, let's say me and the other five, uh, leaving aside the Aontu candidate, James Morris, for now, let's say me and the other five candidates who I believe have the right values, right principles, if we don't get enough votes, one of the seats is going to go to someone else. And in that case, the difference between Aontu and all the other crowd is enormous, right? So I think we really need to be voting Aontu. And so to the people, especially people who are kind of more of my persuasion, feeling like, yeah, Aontu aren't really going far enough, they're a bit too cozy with the status quo, we really need to be practical and say, we need to take the chance and hope for the best with them. And hopefully stuff like this, people like me talking about this is going to make them go, okay, getting a bit of pushback from them. Maybe they have a point. Maybe we should have just been more open and stood, you know, by our principles and say, because I think they actually do believe in limiting the legal immigration too. But anyway, so, and if you're, kind of more Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael voter, I would say Aontu are basically very similar to what your parties were, only, probably when you started voting for them, and they're quite reasonable. And for everyone listening, look, you don't need to vote for them next election, right? This election, you could include them. I would say, independents and, kind of more, full-on nationalists, who stand by free speech, fair borders, full sovereignty in no equivocal terms, just clear. And then Aontu, include them there. So either we'll get one, the independents or nationalists, or we'll get, Aontu as a slightly more mainstream nationalists. No Sinn Féin, no one else, and no there are other independents who are actually basically mainstream, so avoid them as well. And so you can do this election, reset the balance a bit, give a bit of a slap to the mainstream parties, and the people quit politics, new people come in, Overton window shifts, the public feels it's safe now to kind of be more like, yeah, there's just crazy open door policies and all this woke stuff, sexualization of children, and things shift. And then in the next election, maybe you could have Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil candidates who knows, there could be a complete collapse and rebirth of the parties or something. But so it doesn't have to be forever. But in this election, you don't want to be voting for the mainstream. You want to be voting for the alternatives, and I would include Aontu as the most mainstream of alternatives. So just to finish, Brian Garrigan. Okay, so we have in Dublin Bay North, Jamie McGlue, Brian Garrigan, Michael Burke, Kevin Coyle, Jeremy O'Connor, Paul Fitzsimmons, and James Morris of Aontu. So Paul Fitzsimmons of Irish Freedom Party and James Morris of Aontu. I encourage everyone to vote for these. If you think some of them, they're a bit extreme. And sometimes I see people say things, I'm like, wow, okay, yeah, I wouldn't say that, but fair enough. Or even like a vibe, an energy. Well, okay, it doesn't matter. We're in an emergency. We need to protect our country. And so this election, we really need to reset things. Anyone you vote in, they were not going to have enough numbers to like totally change the country, but they hopefully will be enough just to stop the mainstream power from just, charging off the cliff, So let's be smart. At least in this election, we should vote for these kinds of people. So Garamila Margaret, and God bless. See you next time.